Hello, it's me, Adam Luckett, riding solo today on Monday evening, August the 5th. Nick Roush is up to more important things right now, as I think many of you know. If not, I guess you're just totally offline. But we just want to say congrats to Nick and Brooke. Ruby Roush came into the world sometime this afternoon. Do not know the exact time, but the Roushes are, I think, recovering and enjoying their little girl, going boy, girl out to shoot. So congrats to Nick, congrats to Brooke, congrats to Duke, big brother, and congrats to Frank, who's now a middle child. They're in the Roush house. They are that's going to be a busy estate there over there in the South End. So congrats to them. Best of luck to them. And you'll be hearing from him, shortly. I don't know how long he's going to stay away, but I don't imagine it'll be too long. But they're enjoying some time off. In the meantime, it's just been me holding it down in the football fort. And producer, cameraman extraordinaire, Stephen Peak has also been tagging along with me. And we've been doing a lot of football stuff. And so we're going to kind of do things a little different. And before we start, I also want to say to rest in peace to Steve Crackthorpe, former Louisville head coach, former Tulsa head coach. Passed away, I believe, today. I think it was at age 57. He had 11, 12, 13-year battle with Parkinson's disease. So definitely thinking about him and his family. I know anyone in Louisville, there's a chance you might have known some members of his family while they were here. And so it's really sad. I mean, kind of was at the LSU's offensive coordinator at a time and then had to kind of step away because of the Parkinson's disease, and then Texas. I believe that's what ended up leading to the end there for him and his family. So condolences to the Crackthorpe family. Didn't want to not mention that because of, we all know, Kentucky-Louisville. He was part of the rivalry at one point, and things did not go well for him at Louisville, but sad to see him pass away that early. And his son Brad, I believe, went to Trinity. I think Peak may have known him or not. He was around the same age, but he was the same age as my younger brother. He's actually the quarterback coach of the Cincinnati Bengals right now. So thinking of them and their family today. And moving on, we're just gonna talk a lot of ball. I mean, that's what I specialize in, and so hey, that's what we're gonna do. And then we're also gonna do a little Q&A section here at the end. Our good friends at KS Board, our community over there, we submitted some questions. I'm going to get to, I believe, 7 of those here at the end. And we're also going to take some questions from the chat. Peak, if you see anybody says something noteworthy, just throw them on up here. I'm bouncing back and forth between 2 screens here. Here in my office, I see someone asking, where are you at? Anonymous, which is a great name, even though he's mad at us for being late. It just is what it is, man. It's like the SEC kickoff at SEC Network, 7:30. They say it's going to kick off at 7:30. It doesn't start till 7:50. Any good UFC fight starts later than that. So that's just, we try, but we're doing the best we can. So we're here and we got it ramped up now, and it's not 8:13. It's 8. I think I started at 8:06. So I mean, come on, give me a little reprieve here. So we're just gonna talk some football. I'm gonna go through before we get to the mailbag. I have a rundown here. We can call this Luckett's Rundown. Maybe Peak will make a graphic for next time we're here. Or we can get the On3 graphics department. You can see if they can make us a cool little graphic. But I'm just going to run through some stuff here. Like, a lot has happened, you all. Like, a lot has happened since Kentucky's camp opened. Really, everything since Friday. Friday to Saturday was head on a swivel, treading water. There was a lot going on. And so we're just going to kind of touch on, I think, the most important things and kind of unpack everything from that point to now. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to answer some questions from the mailbag. We're going to go to the chat, throw some questions. Say hi if you're in there in the chat. Good to see you all jumping on. We're up to 73 watching now, it looks like. Let's try to get that number pumped up as we get out here. And if you're here, please give us a like over there on the YouTube channel. That really helps us. Helps us get in all the college football algorithms so we can find more savages and mutants like you ball loving crazy people in there, and we need more of those. So let's hit the like button if you don't mind, and I think we're going to start off with what was the biggest story to come out of the weekend, and that was Kentucky's NCAA violations. Long story short, Kentucky goes 10-3 in 2021, but during that season, 11 players were working with UK Healthcare, not working, forging time cards essentially is what happened there. We all know Chris Rodriguez was a big one in that. We know Jordan Wright was involved. Other than that, we don't know the other 9 players. But anyway, no bowl ban, no scholarship reductions, but Mark Stoops loses all 10 of those wins. And basically how I kind of recognize the rule, per the NCAA and per like what UK sends out, I think in their game notes, like one, they can't show, I don't think they can show the Citrus Bowl trophy. So if they were going to have a 10-year reunion or 20-year reunion with that team, I don't think they can bring that trophy out. I think they could probably show highlights, stuff like that, but I think there's stuff they would need to avoid, whether wins or whatnot in that. But I think it's important to note in this, one, Mitch Barnhart and Eli Capilouto both issued statements. We have those up on KSR if you want to go read them. But Mark Stoops didn't issue a statement. I found that interesting. We haven't heard from Mark Stoops since then because the thing dropped right after, essentially, well, it was an hour after he left the podium there at Kroger Field. And right at an hour, or probably under an hour after he left KSR, when he was on with Drew Franklin, Mario, and Billy R. Sports on Friday. So shortly after that happened, all that stuff broke out, and so I'll be interested to see how that comes, what happens there. But in the statement, Eli Capilouto called it a negotiated resolution, which is interesting to me. I think there was NCAA pushing something, probably Kentucky fighting back, and I think Kentucky settled it because, hey, it's in the past. The only thing that really hurts is like Stoops' Wikipedia page. Like when you go on his Wikipedia page, he doesn't have 73 wins anymore. He has 63. So I think that was something really, really notable, that it was a negotiation. I think it's important, all of this. House versus NCAA settlement is looming, and next year they're going to have a $22 million payroll. And they're going to have to pay athletes, and they're going to have to budget that. I think you can't, in today's age, you can really fight the NCAA on some of this stuff. And maybe Kentucky said, hey, we don't want to get into a big, long court battle. And there's also, there's probably some more punishment coming from the swimming accusations and what went on with the assault, or whatever you want to call that. I believe it was sexual assault regarding Lars Jorgensen. And when he was there, that's something I don't really want to get into on this episode, but that's something Kentucky's going to have to deal with the NCAA. So maybe they're, trying to be a good member right now, and willing to accept punishment. But Kentucky reported it right away when they found it, and then no coaches or anyone were no any type of oversight penalties. But I really think the notable thing on this is, obviously you vacate wins, and you never want to do that. But no bowl ban, no scholarship reductions. In a couple years, I wouldn't say we won't remember this, but it's not going to be something that's at the forefront of any conversation. The biggest thing with this is, it's like, if you're on Twitter, it's rivalry ammo. Like, we've seen some of the memes I think Louisville fans are creating about both Kentucky and them standing up. Louisville for their basketball sanctions. Kentucky now has the football wins vacated. But I do think it's important to remember, like, Nick Saban had wins vacated at Alabama. Brian Kelly had wins vacated at Notre Dame. Didn't stop him from getting the LSU job. Nick Saban kept coaching for a long time after he had wins vacated. Hugh Freeze, I think he had multiple years of wins vacated. He's now the head football coach at Auburn. Like, in this age, people forget about that stuff a lot quicker. And I think a lot of it, with the NIL stuff, it's just not something you really even think about. You go back 10 years, this would have been a huge controversy. I mean, just think about 15 years of stuff that used to draw outrage. Ohio State giving out tattoos, Cam Newton and his dad trying to negotiate money from Auburn and Mississippi State, and on and on. I just think now there's just not, with NIL, and we know what this is, guys are getting paid. There's less of that. But Kentucky broke the rules. That's something that wasn't allowed, even with NIL kind of slowly creeping in. I think that was the first year NIL was allowed, but it really hadn't gotten to what it is now, and we were all still trying to figure it out. It was right before collectives popped off, and so I think today's age, you wouldn't need this. But back then, we wouldn't need these players to go and work for UK Healthcare and get money. But back then, that was kind of a thing, and I think Kentucky's going to move on. I wouldn't call it a black eye or anything like that. It's just it's unfortunate, really, at the end of the day. But I think we're all going to move on and get into the season. And the only time I think are really going to come up is when criticism arrives, whether you're criticizing the coach or the program, or you're back and forth with a Tennessee or Louisville fan on Twitter. And that's really, I think that's how I just kind of encapsulated that issue. I think it's unfortunate, but I think we're all going to move on. And then I do want to say shouts to our good people at Monella Bank, presenting sponsor of 11 Personnel. The longtime sponsor now, Monella Bank. You need to get there for any of your banking needs. They've been in business for 128 years. You know why? Because Monticello is where people matter. With 21 branches in 14 counties across the Commonwealth, visit one of their convenient locations or see how Monella Bank can finance your future. Visit them at www.mbcbank.com, or again, visit one of those 21 branches across the Bluegrass State. Monella Bank can help you with anything, whether you need a loan on a house or just need any type of banking advice or work done. They're there to help. So visit them at mbcbank.com and thank them. Thank you, Monella Bank, for again presenting this episode of 11 Personnel. And now we'll shift over to Media Day. That was we kind of forgot about it, but Media Day also took place on Friday afternoon. We heard from Mark Stoops. We heard from offensive coordinator Bush Hamdan. We heard from defensive coordinator Brad White, and we got to talk to multiple players. On our YouTube video today, we just posted interviews with Gavin Wimsett and Brock Vandegrift. So definitely go check that out on KSR's YouTube channel. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. We're up to 36.4 thousand subscribers. Fast growing YouTube channel. We're really trying to get this even higher. We want to get to 50K subs here sooner rather than later. So please, if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. And that just helps you when you get on YouTube. If you're subscribed, our videos are just going to pop up in your feed more often. You're going to see them. So then you don't even have to go to the search bar. It just comes up when you do youtube.com, whether on your phone or on your computer. So hit that subscribe button and you'll get all of our content, whether it's rapid reactions, podcasts, obviously podcasts here. You're in the chat right now. And then, is Monticello the best bank ever? I'm glad to see Nick Roush is up and at him. I was worried he would, you got to sleep when you can. So I'm glad to see him saying that. And maybe he's over there at Monticello Bank trying to get Ruby a checking account right now. That's what he should be doing, because Monticello Bank is the best bank ever. Why? Because they ride with 11 personnel and people matter at Monticello Bank. And so anyway, back to the media day. I thought tempo was a huge talking point here. Mark Stoops and Bush Hamdan got peppered with questions about tempo. And we've kind of talked about this at 11 personnel, kind of what it's going to look like, what I think they're going to try to accomplish this season, as we got some practice highlights rolling here. But I think the big kind of takeaway is, one, after watching two practices, this is a no-huddle operation. Hamdan's even said that. It's pistol. It's traditional shotgun. That's how they're going to operate. It's a get to the line, and it's going to be a lot of check with me. Like, hey, line up. Let's look to the sideline, see what the front is, and then kind of call our play. So maybe it's not your snap. It's not going to be a lot of snapping the ball, I don't think, with 20 seconds on the play clock. Still going to be snapping the ball, I think, with under 15, around 10 seconds. But they're just going to get lined up faster. And that is going to help them, I think, run more plays than what we've seen the last 2 years. And I think that this tempo talk is not empty calories. They are committed to playing faster. And you saw that in practice out there on Friday and Saturday. Bush Hamdan they had periods in practice where they were working kind of their check with me in the sideline. It was about getting lined up, getting the play call, and they're practicing signaling it in and getting plays off. And Brock Vandegrift talked about how there's drills, I believe, in practice where they're trying to get plays off faster. So that is a goal. It's not going to be, again, and Mark Stoops mentioned this, it's not going to be Ole Miss. It's not going to be tempo where it's foot on the gas nonstop, really. And Bush Hamdan said, hey, we're going to be able to go fast when we need to. If we get down, we're going to be able to go fast and go try to score points to get back in football games. But it's not going to be huddle, break the huddle with 7 seconds left, get to the line, try to run a motion, and snap it with one, which is what we saw a lot the last 2 years. Just getting plays in and out of the huddle was difficult for Kentucky. That's not going to be a thing this year. One, because they're not huddling. They're just going to get to the line. And then I think the helmet comms on top of that, that's something everyone's kind of working with. And I do think Cole Kubelik made this point on his podcast, and I agree with it. It's basically like some offensive coordinators are going to know, because maybe they're experienced with the NFL, that sometimes less is more in the helmet comm. Like, do not give mass information overload some quarterbacks. So that is going to, I think, matter to some teams. Now, and that's why I think for Kentucky, or specifically like getting the play calls down to like quicker and being in living in that world is going to help them, I think, play faster and get those in faster, even with the helmet comm. For Tennessee and Ole Miss, I don't know how much that's really going to help because they're lining up so fast. That's more going to be, I think, like if you're Lane Kiffin or you're Josh Heupel, you're going to be like, look, hey, watch. They're probably going to run cover 3 here. So watch the safety, see if the corner buzzes down or he drops back or yada, yada, yada. Or telling them what coverage or front that they're expecting to see. Where I think for Kentucky, there's going to be, all right, we want this, or we're in this. Make sure the tight end goes into motion here. Make sure you wait until maybe the safety declares before we snap the ball, or check with me, hold on a little bit. So all of that. But I definitely think it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be some teams that maybe try to overdo that. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be obvious when we're watching them, but that definitely could be a thing as we get into the season. And then I think the next biggest kind of newsy, or might have been the biggest news, was the injury update. Mark Stuve gave 4 defensive players: Quavo Marshall, Tavion Gatson, Darian Henry-Young, Josiah Hayes. Pretty much out for the season. Was kind of how that was presented. Gatson and Henry-Young were supposed to be rotation players on the defensive line. And then Quavo Marshall was likely headed for a red shirt. 6'4" cornerback, 3-star prospect out of Macon, Georgia. He was likely redshirting anyway, but he was enrolled early for the spring. Looked like he was wearing a brace at the open practice, so he's going to be out. But really, Hayes is the big one. Josiah Hayes, I think you can make the argument in 2023, he was the second best defensive lineman on Kentucky's team, I think, for most of the season, next to Deion Walker, obviously first. So that is a significant loss. What was kind of the surprising part during that press conference was Brad Stoops was like, nah, we're good. I feel good. We got seniors. We got good depth. I feel good. Which I thought was interesting because they don't really have true nose tackle depth. If we're going to be completely honest here, they've got Keyshawn Silver, who, by the way, was one of more impressive players. I'm going to write about this at KSR Plus later this week. And for our YouTube users only, use the code. You can use the code UK1 and get 2 months, a deal for 2 months there if you check that out. But yeah, there you go. $1 for 2 months, code UK1, KSR Plus, special offer. Still up and running here. So definitely take advantage of that. I'm going to write about kind of the players that surprised me. That's probably going to go up probably Wednesday. Tuesday we got to practice, but probably Wednesday we're going to be getting that up there on Plus. Basically, Keyshawn Silver is going to be one of those players. I think he looks more. I think he's added on good muscle. He looks bigger, but he also was moving, I thought, a little bit more fluidly. So I was really impressed with him, and that looks like a legitimate big time nose tackle in college football. So he is the guy right now. But after him, where you at? Kentucky fished in the portal, didn't find anything, had some misses, and then lands Denius Jackson out of junior college. And that's like a big we'll see to me. Like, can you get 10 snaps? If you got 10 snaps out of the game out of him, that would be a big, big win. That's a big we'll see, I think, moving forward. But after that, you're just not any true noses. Kendrick Gilbert was a guy running with the twos, redshirt freshman out of Indianapolis Cathedral, 4-star prospect. But he's a skinnier guy. Like, he's 6'5", 6'6", about 270 pounds. He's skinnier. Like, you look at Khalil Saunders, who can maybe play in there. He's probably like 280 to 290. I wouldn't call that a natural nose tackle, natural position for him. And Trayvon Ripka has played some nose, like in dime as like a pass rusher. And then obviously Deion Walker can play there, but I don't think you want him there on every down because part of the value of Deion Walker is his positional flexibility and his versatility. How you can move him around on the front, and that makes it harder for offensive lines figuring out how to scheme up their coverage or their run game because they got to get zero blocked. And so that makes it more difficult where if he's there, it makes it easier when they're building out game plans. And that Kentucky, I think, loses some game day leverage if he's not moving around from a game planning standpoint. So you don't want to necessarily have him playing nose most of the time. So where do you look at? And I think one of my bigger takeaways from Media Day was one, I think they're listening to the criticism. What was the biggest criticism last year? It was offensively, pace of play. And it was defensively. I mean, how many times did we hear soft zone or not pressuring or just sitting back? And I think what he said is they're going to be more versatile, more multiple on defense, and they're going to play more in man coverage. Him and Mark Stoops said that to me, and that also ties in with the front. I think you're going to see them, because of their experience, play more fronts. I think we're going to see more even down fronts. And I think Walker's a big piece of that because of his just overall versatility. And I think that's going to be a big part of this defense. And they're going to show, I think they're going to be able to be more complex because they're so old. I think when you look at them, like starting lineups get on the defensive line, you've got Keyshawn Silver, Deion Walker, Trayvon Ripka, and then essentially your other two starters, Octavius Oxendine, Khalil Saunders. All of those guys outside of Deion Walker and Silver have been in the program for at least 4 years. And then Walker's in year 3. Silver's in year 2. It's 4th year of college football. Like, they're just old and experienced. Then at linebacker, De'Eric Jackson, Pop Dumas-Johnson, both seniors, both played a lot of football in this league. J.J. Weaver feels like he's been here since the Reagan administration. Going to be starting at edge. So I think they're going to be able to be a little bit more complex. And that's going to allow them, I think, to do different things and maybe get more aggressive than we've seen in the past. And part of the reason I think they're going to be more aggressive is because I think they feel good in their secondary. And I think they raised the floor at both corner and safety. Adding Christian Story was I think a big get for them just to have some insurance in that safety room. And then I don't think they necessarily wanted to play Ty Bryant as a true freshman, but now getting him in the game and getting that out of the way, I think is going to benefit both him and the defense this year. And then you bring back Zion Childress and Jordan Lovett. And with this experience, now they're experimenting with Zion Childress in the nickel. He told KSR on Saturday that he feels like it's a more natural position for him. So is he going to play more nickel this year? And then that allows Ty Bryant to play back deep with Jordan Lovett. And then at the cornerback, I think obviously Max Hairston is a dude, and he was one of my big winners, I think, from these open practices. Because at these open practices, typically, specifically, this really stands out at the skill position. It's harder at the line of scrimmage, but the skill positions, and we've seen it more from offensive players to me. Like Wan'Dale Robinson and Lynn Bolden are two that stick out that they were just kind of uncoverable when at these open practices early in camp. Like defense just didn't have answers for them. Where I think it was kind of the opposite here. Like Maxwell Hairston was blowing stuff up. Was playing some lockdown coverage, was getting physical, was staying on the top of routes, and really winning most of his matchups that I saw, that I got eyes on. And he was blowing up, he was wrecking practice. And that's what you want to see from what you think is one of the better players at his position in the SEC. So he should be able to wreck practice. So that was a good sign for him. So you got him. And then opposite of him, Jansen Dunn is right now his cornerback 2. And then I think DJ Waller Jr., the Michigan transfer, and JQ Hardaway are competing for cornerback 3. And then I think Nasir Addison is legitimately kind of involved there. And he's their 5th cornerback, and I think they feel good about them. Those guys made competitive plays all throughout practice. The communication was really strong, I thought, in the back end pre-snap. And there's a lot to like, I think, about them. Waller's obviously the big kind of high ceiling, I think, player there outside Hairston, and that's who I would still expect to end up being the starter. But they've got legitimate depth in that room with Hardaway's played snaps. Dunn has played snaps now. Addison is a guy that they like a lot. So you got 5 guys in that cornerback room, where last year it was Andrew Phillips and a bunch of, we'll see. I mean, that's really what that cornerback room was last year. And even Phillips hadn't played there full time at corner. So you had a lot of unknown there. And then at safety, I think they were decimated by injury and some lack of depth caught up to them. And so where you look now, where I think they really, really feel good about their depth and experience and some of the high-end talent they have in the secondary, and I think that's going to lead them to maybe play more aggressive, and I think we're going to see them play some more man. Now, this is not going to be a straight-up man defense. They're going to still play zone. I would imagine they'll probably still lean zone heavy, but I'm really looking at kind of the third down package. Like, this third down, do they get more aggressive? Because Brad White talked about third down is the down they really have to get better at. That's what they're looking to improve. And third down is the down. Usually teams like to, hey, let's man up. Let's get off the field. Let's challenge these dudes on 3rd and 7. Let's challenge these dudes on 3rd and 9. And I think that's what we could see play out. And so that's really going to be interesting to watch. And we're really not going to, I don't think, see that until it's probably, SEC games start week 2. So we're probably going to find out pretty early. But I think that's what you're looking at. And then the other big thing I think to come out of media day was, again, Mark Stoops talking about the offensive line. And we have to run the ball when we want to run it. We have to run it when everyone knows in the stadium we want to run it. And basically that means having game control, and when it's a 4-minute offense, you can run it. When you need to get first downs at the end of games to churn out clock, you got to be able to run it, churn out first downs. I go back to the Clemson game really in my head. I think Kentucky had that lead there, and they had the ball, and they kind of just needed to run the ball there for a bit, especially when the turnovers start to happen. Let's just run the ball and get a couple first downs. And they couldn't do that. And so that put them behind the chains a lot, and then some bad things would happen. And I think that's why Clemson, you started to see those turnovers when they really just needed to settle down and run the football in a kind of a traditional way. They weren't able to do that. And so that's a repeated kind of line. We've heard that line all offseason. We heard it. Heck, we heard it in November last year. It was like, or in October and November, it was like, yeah, they're playing better, but still not good enough. We're still not moving people, still not running the ball well enough. And Kentucky's ranked sub-90 in rushing success rate each of the last 2 seasons. So they got to find a way to get better at that. Now, Bush Hamden said he did like his depth in that room, loves having a guy like Eli Cox at center who's super experienced, and needs that group to play well this year because of all the experience they have. And I wrote about this today. Like, the offensive line, it's a huge talking point. It's a huge hot button issue, I think, for this program. And we talk about it all the time. And I'm sure at your tailgates this year at Kroger Field, you are going to be talking about it. When you're at Roosters enjoying a cold beer, you're going to be talking about the offensive line because that's what we do, because we are ate up with this sport. But I just don't. But my point in the column I wrote today was, hey, it's not just on them. It can't just be, well, if they can't physically dominate people at the point of attack, that, well, we can't run the football. Like, obviously there is an element of that you have to be able to do that in certain situations. You have to impose your will on an opponent and all of that. But they also need some help. They need some help from the scheme. They need some help from the play caller. They need some help from the 6 other players on offense. Like, number one, QB run. Like, Kentucky didn't have any semblance of a design QB run game the last 2 years. They refused to run Will Levis. Devin Leary was a strict pocket passer. That alone should help raise the floor of this run game. And I think it's going to be something we'll see. We already heard Hamden talk about the importance of it. So we can expect, I think, Brock Vandegrift for that to be in the package. I think they added Gavin Wimsatt for a reason. 1, he's insurance. 2, I think they're going to probably have a package for him to maybe take some carries off Vandegrift. And he's a bigger body in there, and he was really successful in kind of playing glorified Wildcat quarterback for Rutgers, specifically in the red zone. 11 rushing touchdowns, popped a couple, but really most of his damage was done kind of high red zone to low red zone, like moving the chains on 3rd and short and running the football down there when you get close to the paint. And so I think that's going to be a package, and I think that is going to help immensely get this run game going. When you kind of look at Kentucky's best run games they've had under Stoops, QB run's been big. Steven Johnson ran for over 500 non-sack yards. Terry Wilson eclipsed 600 non-sack yards in 2018. Lynn Bolden probably would have ran for 2,500 yards if they let him play quarterback the full season. But you just throw that a year out, even Levis in 2021. I think we really got excited about that offense when they started running him in the second half of the year, and it really, I think, unlocked some things for the offense. And he ended up running, and we all remember the Louisville game, obviously, but I think he ran for right at 600 or 500 to 600 non-sack yards, 9 rushing touchdowns. So I think that's going to be a big part, and I think that's really going to help out the offensive line and the run game get going, is just having an element of QB run. And I think you can see some of that in practice. There's the zone read looks that we all know that they're running. And then I think there's also going to be, obviously, draws, QB counters, maybe some QB powers, I think, with Wimsatt when he gets involved. And then there's the stuff you can do off of those actions in the play-action pass game. So I think it's going to be a big part of the offense. And that's why I would, like, if you're going to say buy or sell Kentucky's run game, I would buy, because I think this QB run game is just going to help a ton. And I think that's really important because running back is still kind of, what do you expect? What are you getting? I thought Chip Trainum looked good in the practice, but after him, that's a big question mark. I thought Jason Patterson was just okay. Didn't really get a ton of eyes on him. He was mostly with the twos from what I saw. And then Demi Seymour-Cornbay, I think his value is really kind of in the pass game. But if you have to run him, I think he can do some things. And he popped some. His explosive run rate was good last year in limited carries. But that's still TBD. Quarterback can help offset that and can really help supplement their run game. And I think it's going to be the thing that gets them out of that cellar from an efficiency standpoint, is having a QB that can run there. And in tricky and in like in the 4-minute offense, and times you have to have it, that's when you would save the QB run. That's when you pull the read. That's when you maybe pull a QB counter out of nowhere to kind of catch the defense off guard. And so I think that's going to be a huge part of the offense, and Hamden has shown that both at Missouri in the last 3 games he called plays and at Boise State, that he is willing to run that quarterback, and I think that's going to be a good thing overall, I think, for the Kentucky run game, and it's going to take some pressure off of that offensive line. And then secondly, at Fan Day, I just like Big Blue Nation. I thought it was a really good fan turnout. One of these fan days, a lot of times people go and then they like by the time it's over, hardly anyone's there. But this one, I thought the attendance at the end, they had good retention numbers. Like if it was with a YouTube video, the retention numbers would have been very, very high. So I mean, great fan turnout. Fans were there engaging with the players, and that was really cool to see, and engaging with Mark Stoops after the practice. And like, again, I think we can get lost sometimes in our message board or in Twitter, because there's room for criticism, and they deserve some criticism in certain areas, but still I think the fan base's excitement for this team is really, really high. There's only 100 or so tickets left, season tickets left. They're going to sell out probably season tickets. They're going to have a bunch of sold out games. It's a fun home schedule. You get South Carolina, Georgia, you get Louisville. Auburn comes to town for the first time since 2015. It's a fun home schedule. 8 home games. You get Vandy at home as well. You get week 1 night kickoff. I think people are excited. We're going to have some fun environments in Colorado Field. So again, I think you got to really tip your cap to the fans. Really, really turning out well and really supporting this program. And the home environments the last 2-3 years have been really excellent, specifically since COVID ended. The 2021 Florida game I talk about a lot, which is a crazy kind of day and lead up to the game, and then LSU the next week was really, really fun. But even last year, the Florida game last year, they had a great, great turnout, and they've had some good crowds, not even mentioned in some other ones. So that's looking like that's going to be a strength for you. So I'm really excited week 2 to see that South Carolina game. I think people are going to be charged up for that one. So that's going to be fun. And we kind of mentioned this earlier, Zion Childress at nickel. Like, that's interesting to me. They call it, I believe that might be their medium package now. But Alex Safari, he has moved to off-ball linebacker, and he was running Will with the twosome, but he was playing Sam off-ball linebacker too with the ones. Like right now, I think he's going to be kind of bouncing back and forth. To me, the move was one for his NFL future, and for Kentucky to have a plan. I think in 2025, like, they're going to have him and just plug him in at will after they lose Dumas Johnson and lose the Eric Walker, so you at least have one guy there. But they also need him to play Sam, because the numbers, like, in that 3-4 in their outside linebacker room are a little interesting, because probably their 2 true Sam linebackers are 2 true freshmen, and Jacob Smith and Steven Souls. Now, are either of those ready to play at all? So I still think Afari, I think most of his snaps this year will probably come as kind of that that tweener position, but they are going to play him, I think, at will some. And if there was an injury, I think you might see more of him. And then another one, Abaselm at offensive guard, I thought was really, really impressive on Saturday. I was really impressed with him. True freshman. I wouldn't expect maybe to see him this year, but the future, like he looks like a long-term answer to me at guard. I thought to me, he was bigger in his lower half than I thought he would be. Like he was really well put together. In pass pro, he was dropping anchor, had good punch, inside hands, was really strong at the point of attack, and I liked what I saw from him. And he's a guy running with the twos at left guard. I really, really like what I saw from the Simon Kent product. True freshman, top 500 recruit. This was a guy Kentucky wrapped up early. Florida tried to enter the chat late, but he kind of shut his recruitment down early. And he's looking like a guy that's going to be a really, really, I think, good in-state recruiting win for them. So do I think he's going to maybe play a big role this year? No, but moving forward, he could be an answer long-term for you at one of the guard spots, and that's really nice. And you even saw some cross-training, I think, going on with him at center. So maybe it's a thing, will he play center? I think his game's probably better suited for guard, but he was a guy I really liked out of high school, and he's backed that up. Just one practice, but he really, really looked the part. So I would get excited about Abaselm. Then Florida transfer Jalen Farmer. He's starting at right guard right now for Kentucky. Biggest thing that stood out for me is just the sheer size. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'5", big, broad shoulders, long arms, thick lower half. And I like what I saw from him just from a strength and play style standpoint. Now, there's some, I think, technical refinement that needs to occur with Farmer. Outside hands was a big thing that I saw in the practice. He was letting defenders kind of get into him. And so, but if he can work on his striking accuracy, I think there's some real raw power there where he could be potentially develop into a really kind of forceful mover, road grader potentially. So I liked what I saw from him. Again, he's got 3 years of eligibility left. Kentucky's asking him to start at right guard. You can kind of see the potential with Jalen Farmer. And then Harley Gilmore and Fred Ferrier, I think they're going to have roles in this passing game. Harley Gilmore, I was really impressed with. Not necessarily the pass catching or the route running. I think all that's there, but he was mixing it up blocking wise with some of these corners. And there was times where they were getting really frustrated with him. There was one where he was blocked someone 10, 15 yards down the field. There was other one where he mixed it up, and there might have been a slap on the head or the helmet, after the play from the defensive player. So he was irritating some guys there. And I think you'd like to see that, especially from a young true freshman at that position. Like if he's getting scrappy and getting after that, the coaches are going to love that. And that's going to help him potentially get on the field. So I like Gilmore. He's a really important part, I think, for the future of this offense. But he's going to play some this year, and that's good. And that's low-key, I think, really good recruiting win for the Wildcats. And then Fred Ferrier, UAB transfer, they added him to kind of be an adult and a grown man in the room, somebody with a strong work ethic, and you've seen that play off. He made some really good plays with the twos and had 2 vertical catches in the fan day practice, and I think he's going to be involved in the rotation as kind of an inside-outside guy that I think the coaching staff is going to trust. So I think he's going to have a role. And then again, the defense just continues to impress. I'm even more impressed with them than I thought I would be at this point. The secondary depth, really kind of excites me because I think that the floor was raised there, and that was kind of the weakest point of the team last year was just that pass defense. And then when Kentucky got into where they had to play past their starters, I think they got into some trouble. But I think that their biggest worry or problem was maybe fixed with this depth. They're going to be better there. And then Hairston's got star power, and then the front is really, really good. Depth, we'll see. Brad White's expressing some confidence I wasn't really expecting, but they feel good about that front, and I would feel good too if I was coaching big number 0. And then those linebackers, man, like De'Eric Jackson and Pop Dumas Johnson, I do wonder if we're just not really talking about them enough. De'Eric Jackson is a really, really good SEC linebacker. I think he's probably the most underappreciated player on this team. And Pop Dumas Johnson was a 2-year starter at Georgia, and it was awesome as a sophomore. Having those two together is going to be potentially very fun, especially playing behind a front that should probably eat up a lot of blocks and cause some disruption themselves. So having them able to roam free and maybe peel off and come as free runners and simulated pressures and stuff of that nature. It's something I think Dumas Johnson is really good at. That's exciting to see. And so I'm really excited about that group. And again, Weaver gives them a high floor guy, I think. At Jack, his pass rush is limited, but that guy's a bull in the run game, and he can set hard edges. So I'm really excited about that front and just the defense overall because of what I saw secondary. Not necessarily top end, just I think they've really improved the depth in the floor, and they have options now, and I don't think they really had that in the past, or specifically last year. And finally, Jacob Cowley, the freshman kicker, he's got a boot now. Like we saw the 55-yarder on Twitter, but he hit a 45 when right down the pipe. To me, like when I watch kickers, and I'm no Johnny Kicker, but like to me, I want to like it should sound like something explosive. They should make a big sound, and his did that. And then the height. Do you get the good height on it? And he did that. Like the ball was clearing the top of the post on his kicks. Even the one he had one from 50 that went wide left. Even that one was up at the top of the post. So to me, like you want to prevent blocks, that's the best way to do it. And so I like what I saw from him. Intrigued if he kind of becomes their kickoff specialist this year. And so now we're going to shift to the mailbag section here at 11 Personnel. But first, we're going to go to our next sponsor. 11 Personnel is also brought to you by our friend Andy Luckett at My Perfect Franchise. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran. Having owned multiple franchises and businesses, using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. If you are wanting to find a way out of corporate America, wanting a side hustle business or a way to diversify, reach out to Andy, as he's got a ton of knowledge in this world, and best of all, his services are 100% free to you, always. After you finish this post, you can learn more and reach Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Bush Hamden is trying to diversify Kentucky's run game. Andy Luckett can diversify your business. So check him out. Again, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He could just help you get to operating more efficiently so you can get that cash flow rolling. So just give him a call, go online, send him an email, and see what Andy can do for you. And so we'll go over to the chat a little bit. I see we're up to 150 watching. I knew we could get those numbers up. Get some the message here before we get into the mailbag. They need to get, let's see. I want to grow up to be just like Luckett, David Miller. I'm not sure you want to do that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But, hey, to each his own. I see there's some NIL chats going on. Someone saying I'll fight if that happens. So I missed some good chat action going on here. So you all keep this going. It's a very fun. And we'll get to some questions after we get through these 6-7 mailbag. So wait until the end there, and then we'll try to get a few questions there in the chat. So I appreciate everyone being on tonight. I know it's a Monday night. We're all waiting for Troy and Buck to take over our Monday nights. But in the meantime, leading up to Monday Night Football, we will be here for some type of podcast, and we'll do that all season. And I think we're gonna try to have a Monday night show here throughout until Toe Meets Leather, and then we'll continue the Monday shows when Joe Burrow starts his run to the Super Bowl. And so we'll start off. Look at Peak. Like Peak's a man. He's got the questions rolling already. AP Schlenth on the board. Sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but that's just how I know to read that. Which game is circled on the schedule as your need to win to push positive momentum toward the remainder of the season / the offseason? This one is pretty cut and dry. We've talked about it 100 times. South Carolina, you got to win that game. It's hard to see Kentucky having a successful season if they do not beat the Gamecocks this year. I even think how the game sets up is really advantageous to Kentucky. You get Lenore Sellers early. Now, there's not going to be much about Sellers, but I can't imagine South Carolina's going to go 5 wide and try to throw the ball all over the place with Rocket Sanders, the Arkansas transfer. They're going to try to run the football. I think they're going to play right into Kentucky's teeth on defense. So I like where that sets up. Now, South Carolina, I think, could be a little sneaky on defense. Like under low-key, they're going to have a really good defensive line. And so they could maybe give Kentucky some challenges, but that's offensively for Kentucky. But that's a game they should win. Another one, I think the at Florida game is really big. We have to kind of see where both Kentucky and Florida are at in the middle of October. but that could kind of be a game that could start Florida's end of the year slide potentially, and that's a team Kentucky's had a lot of success against. Again, I think the way Billy Napier likes to play ball kind of plays into the teeth for Kentucky. He tries to play downhill, big boy, mow you over, and they're just not going to do that against Kentucky's defense. And then defensively, they have a lot of questions, Florida does still. And so I think I like how that game aligns potentially for Kentucky. But again, we got to see where both teams are at that point. It's hard to project. And then always the offseason. It's like the Louisville game's huge for that. And that's why I love having it at the end of the year. Because you get arguably your biggest game against a team in the fan base you don't like very much. You get a chance to beat them and close out shop and get into the offseason, get into the portal world. And so for Kentucky, I think most importantly, like last year, that was huge. And really the beginning of this run, winning that game in 2016 kind of started all of this. And then last year, I think that was their biggest win. And then 2021, I think it really that put a stamp on a really good season. Was going in there and when Louisville had some juice. People were talking like Malik Cunningham should be in the Heisman conversation after he ran for 8,000 yards against a Duke defense that just wanted to run cover zero all game without the personnel. And so I think that's the one always for the offseason. Winning that always, no matter how the season goes, you have somewhat of a good taste in your mouth if you're able to beat Louisville. And again, like Brahms loading up in the portal. Again, they went one and done with a guy at quarterback and Tyler Shuck again. They've got a lot of one and done kind of, mercenaries on the team. Like that's how they're building their roster. And if you beat them twice doing that, like that would be, I think, upsetting for them. Now I don't think they're going to go be 10-1 entering that game, but you can maybe turn an 8-4 season into a 7-5 season. And that would be, I think, a big deal and still kind of let you have supremacy in that rivalry. And if you want to get into high school recruiting stuff, Kentucky still kind of owning the state as of now. They're getting who they want. And then if Louisville's getting some guys, but they're typically not guys Kentucky's in after. And so those three games, I think, if you were going to rank them, those are the biggest on the schedule. Next question over at KS Board. Again, go ahead and take the plunge with us. Sign up right now. Get it. We're getting in-depth articles, recruiting coverage from Jacob Polacek. You got $1 for 2 months, code UK1. You can't beat that. And the board is just really getting going. We're really building a fun, interactive community over there. It's good back and forth. And then the game blogs are going to start. And then as the season comes, some of my favorite things during the season is just following along with the board about what's going on. Hey, who's doing this over there? What's going on at LSU, Arkansas? Just what's going on. Like last year, Jacksonville State kind of became the unofficial KSR Plus team because they were playing on Wednesday nights. Rich Rod was their coach, and they were kicking some ass. And so, we dubbed them America's team. So there's little things like that you can follow during the college football season. We already got that What a Sport thread. It's already getting going for this year. That we try to bring out the ridiculousness. And so please, just if you haven't yet, go ahead and take that plunge with us. If you like what you hear on 11 Personnel, you're going to love what you see at KS Board at ksrplus.com. And Polacek's pumping out basketball stuff too. I'm pumping out good scoop on the recruiting trail. So you're getting best of both sports there. But anyway, UK Alum 99, who is in line to back up Pop Dumas Johnson and D-Jack. Seems like you can bank on an injury to one of the middle linebackers every season. What does depth look like if there is an injury? It's a good question. We kind of talked about this with Afari. I think David Rayner is kind of your linebacker 3. And then I think Alex Afari is your linebacker 4. And then after that, I think it's Grant Godfrey, redshirt freshman. Then I think it's a bunch of true freshmen. So that's the 5 I would start with. Those are the 5 linebacker. I think most of those freshmen are probably going to redshirt. If they don't, they may play in a couple games, like just special teams roles. And then Javen Brown's in there somewhere, but it's hard to get a read on the sophomore. I would say Rayner's obviously 3, but Afari's the big one because I think if someone got injured, that would kind of maybe be the guy they would plug in and try to play more snaps. And mainly, I think it's kind of a contingency plan for next year. So I think that's where they're at. They're at with Afari and Rayner kind of right there at the second team, and that's their 4. And that is right. That off-ball linebacker, Kentucky lost both guys, Guerre and Jaquez Jones. in 2022. DeAndre Square was like, he had a hard time staying healthy his career. So you were playing some backups at different points, right? Everyone, like 2019, Cash Daniel has a couple injuries that knock him out of the game, but you had Chris Oates available, so you didn't really miss a beat. So it's important to have depth at this position. So that's where I think Kentucky is. Rayner, I thought, did some good things in his time on the field for Kentucky last year. And then Afari will be interesting to watch, see how he plays there. But I think that's their plan right now. Play Jackson and Dumas Johnson as much as possible, and then you've got Rayners to sprinkle in there, and you also got Afari to kind of tinker with. And I think like week one, if you get a lead right early, I think I wouldn't be surprised that you see Afari, they throw him out there and just let him go for maybe 2-3 series if the game's out of hand to just try to get some reps and see what they have with the junior at off-ball linebacker. We'll get to the next question here momentarily. Walker, y'all, have your expectations for the defense changed? Really good question here. I think they have, because I think the secondary floor has got me excited. I mean, that is the big reason. I think, obviously, we know what the front is, and we know the front's potential. And we all think Deion Walker's going to be an All-American. Pop Dumas Johnson has already been an All-American. It's 2 All-Americans you got right there, right, potentially. And then you got a bunch of old veteran players, and like De'Aaron Jackson, I've already talked about. I think he's probably one of the most underappreciated defensive players in the whole SEC. This is a guy who's led Kentucky in tackles these last 2 years. He does not miss tackles. If you kind of look at his missed tackle rate, like when he goes in the draft, that's going to be his thing. This dude just makes tackles all over the place, and I think he's a little better in coverage than most people give him credit for. And so, I think he's a very well-rounded player. And you put those two together, I think that's another guy who I think could be an all-SEC type player. So we know what the front is. Secondary, I don't think they're going to be near one of the best secondaries in the SEC, but I think they got a chance to be pretty good, and that changes things for Kentucky's defense. We got Schlenth there. Cat 14 is next. Who of the freshman class will help the most with the pass rush? We had a mix up there in the graphics. My answer is Gerard Smith II. Just because I think they need some interior defensive tackle depth. So I think that gives him an avenue for snaps. And he is a twitchy, explosive winner at the point of attack. He can create penetration. He can beat people one-on-one. He's already got a decent pass rush toolbox as a young player. He's got explosiveness. He's really twitchy out of snap. And I thought that showed up even in open practice. You can really see what you thought you saw in the high school tape. Like, this guy is twitched up, can really move for his size. So he's a guy I can see emerge as a situational rusher and potentially gives Kentucky something. And he's going to get probably one-on-ones. And if he can win a couple of those, he could end up with sacks because of the gravity that Walker is going to present. And then Smith being a true freshman, like, he's a guy that like, if you get a season total prop, like over 2.5 sacks, over 2 sacks, I would consider playing that, because I think you could see him get in there and get a couple because kind of his raw skill set, and then what is going to be around him on the defensive line. I think he's going to be a guy that I could see having a role in kind of one of those pass rushing packages for Kentucky. Then we'll move on to our next question here in just a second. See if we can pull it up here. Monty Katz, do you put any credence in Brad White mentioning they needed to play some more man? Yeah, I think there was a sign of that they have heard the criticism, and that they're not just a soft zone defense, that they are going to try to play aggressive. And I think it was saying without saying, they probably feel more confident in their personnel this year to try and do that. Again, I think last year at cornerback depth was just an issue. Yeah, I think 5-6 games in, you realize you had a pretty good starting tandem in Phillips and Hairston, but you didn't have any depth. Phillips had to play nickel when you face true spread to any spread offense, and then Hairston was playing with a daggone club on his hand all year. I just don't think they felt super confident in their their personnel out there. And then I think you look to the bowl game. I think that was a lot of it. They just didn't have any confidence in their cornerbacks, and you saw them kind of mix and match throughout the year. Where one week J.Q. Hardaway's cornerback 3, the next week it's Jordan Robinson, and this next week, let's throw Jansen Dunn out there. They just didn't have a lot of confidence in that unit, but now they get the guys back, second year in the system. I think they're just better built to do some more different things where they don't feel like they have to, I think, protect their secondary as much moving forward. And Alvin Harrison there helps a ton. But that's kind of what I take away from him saying they need to play more man. It's mostly they feel confident, not only in probably their pass rush and in their cornerbacks, but also their safety position too. They feel like their safety position can help out if their bust happen or this or that. They feel like there's going to be a high level of trust there. And so I just think they feel to me it's a statement that they feel better about the personnel and the depth of personnel on the roster. Then Justice Norris, I believe this is the last question here, and we'll get over to the chat. How has Kamari Anderson looked? Creep snaps for him this year. Kamari Anderson, he should be one of the first ones they bring off the bus. He looks good. You put him in pads, he looks like he belongs. He was getting some reps in 12 personnel with the ones. They were splitting him out wide some. He's a guy. Again, he looks like a potential NFL guy. Now he still needs to develop, and we need to see him go out in the field and block big people and make catches and do all of that. But he looks the part, and he's going to have a role, I think, in the offense. And similar to linebacker, tight end is also position of attrition we've seen at Kentucky. Brendan Bates got hurt. He would have to miss games or miss time a few times in his career. We've seen Caddis get hurt at the end of the Louisville game his true freshman year, missed some time last year. Jordan Dingle missed some time last year. I believe he missed the bowl game the year before that. So it's a position where guys get banged up, and you have to have depth. So, am I worried that maybe Kamari Anderson, if he doesn't play a ton in week 1 or week 2? No, because eventually you're going to need that depth, and you're going to need guys to play. And it's why a guy like Willie Rodriguez probably isn't going to redshirt. He's probably going to play at some point down the line because they're going to need him available if an injury happens, because that has been a position that gets hit by attrition. And especially if you're playing more plays, too. That's another thing. Kentucky's going to be get more snaps off, so that means more plays. That means more chance for more guys to play. So I think Anderson, he's going to see increased snaps, and he's going to have a role in this offense. Now, how big of a role? I think that's wait and see. And we'll get to some of our chat questions here. So if you got them, send them. MF Clar 2, if Gavin Wimsatt develops better accuracy, is he a threat to be QB1? This is Brock Vandegrift's show. I think it's really important to port that out. It's Vandegrift's show. Now, if something happened where Brock got hurt or if the offense was really struggling, that is what Wimsatt is for. But so no, to answer your question, but that is the one. That's why he's at Kentucky and not at Rutgers right now. It's because of the accuracy. The footwork was erratic, and really, it's not necessarily the vertical throws. It's a lot of the short to intermediate stuff that he struggled with. The quick game, the easy throws that he struggled with. A lot of it was tied to footwork. And when I talked to him, he said that's the thing I really got to work on. It's my footwork, because that's where it starts, my accuracy. And he said that starts my footwork. And so, to me, that was a good sign that he knows what he needs to work on. And that's what Kentucky needs him to improve on. But this is BVG's show. And Kentucky's going to sink or swim, I think, for the most part, with him. But Wimsatt gives them a guy with some skills and with experience that in case something bad happens, they have a decent alternative option and a higher floor option than they've had the last couple of years. Nobody. It's the Brock show for this and next year. And I'm very looking forward to everyone just embracing Brocktober. When big games start in October, we can just call it Brocktober. CJ, Adam, there was a ton of jet motion at practice. Was that just getting timing down, or should we expect a good dosage of jet sweeps? I think jet sweeps are going to be part of the offense, both handoffs and pop passes, mainly to Berrien Brown and then Jamori Macklin as well. And I think that's going to be the one motion you see a lot of, is kind of just the wide receiver jet motion. Mainly, that's another thing you can do to supplement the run game too, is just get it to Berrien Brown. And so I do think that is going to be part of the offense, CJ. What's a ceiling and a floor for the new punter, Adam Morgan? This is a good question. Yeah, I didn't get to see Mr. Laros punt. I wasn't really looking for it, to be honest. There was some other positions I was more locked in on. But this is a guy that averaged like right at 48, 47 yards per punt. In the Georgia game, he was awesome for UT Martin last year. I think, getting some hang time, improving in the net punt rating, limiting returns, that's going to be the big thing. Do I think he's going to be another Max Duffy, Ray Guy winner? No, but I think he can get a thing to where Kentucky, the net field position can improve. I think the point I wanted to make, in 2018, we all remember how great that defense was, right? They were 8th in points per scoring opportunity allowed. That means anytime a team got a red zone extended, anytime a team got a first down inside the red zone. So they were bend but don't break, but when they got on their side of the field, they got stops. Sack rate, they were top 10 because Josh Allen was an absolute freak. And then the next thing they did great defensively was where they started. They were number 3 overall in average field position, 25.6, average starting position, on 25.6 for opposing offenses. Why was that so good? One, Kentucky could run the ball with some efficiency with Benny Snell, right? Kentucky here, they were, I believe, top 40 in rushing success rate, something along those lines. So they could run the ball. And then number 2, Max Duffy was an absolute awesome punter, was the best punter in the country, right? So they got to play with leverage, with field position leverage. That's something the defense hasn't really had last couple of years, and that's hurt them. So I think that's where he can make a big impact, Laros, is kind of getting the defense in more advantageous positions, starting drives. And so that's going to be, I think, his real value to the team, is hitting some punts of net 40 without much return. So you have a chance to flip the field, where Kentucky really wasn't flipping the field. They were just punting and hoping that they would gain more than 20 yards, 25, 30 yards on a punt. Ken Foster asked, what did you think of Cutter? I thought Cutter Boley looked good for a true freshman quarterback in one of his first 15 to 25 practices. Like, with Cutter, you can just see, like, he looks the part. He looks good. Like, he's got a whip of an arm. He's tall. It's easy throwing motion. Ball explodes out of his hand. I thought he hit a crosser that was very accurate. That was the kind of throw you want him to see, be able to hit those types of throws. And he can throw it deep. So I like what I saw for him. But I also think, like, Kentucky getting Wimsatt might be the best thing to happen to Cutter Boley in year 1. There's no real pressure on him now. It's, hey, sit back, learn this offense, learn what college football is, how you have to work, all of that, and then just take notes. And then next year, you're in the quarterback competition. Or next year, maybe not in the quarterback competition, but you're preparing to start maybe the year after that, once potentially Brock Vandagriff left. And maybe you're ready to be the backup next year. But this year, just sit back, see how everything plays out, learn on the job, and then you're ready to go year 2. So I think for him, I think it's a good thing that he's not rushing to be the backup, or doesn't have a lot of pressure on him to be the backup quarterback and prepare. He can just sit back and kind of see how everything goes and have a stress-free year 1 before the heat starts turning up as he progresses as a player in Kentucky's program. And then let's see here. Which former QBs would you compare Brock Vandagriff to? Andrew Board asks. I mentioned this to a friend of the program, Derek Terry, earlier this week, but he's kind of got some Connor Shaw vibes to me. If you all remember Connor Shaw at South Carolina. Now, I think Brock is more talented than Connor Shaw. But, like, the way people talk about him, like the Georgia guys, he's not a slider. Bush Hamden, old school work ethic, good leader. And that was kind of Shaw's secret sauce. Like, he was just a guy. He was a guy that could carry a team, was a great leader. Everyone rallied around him, and he put his body on the line, and he made big throws when you had to make it. And so I think Brock's probably a more talented player than Shaw, but that's a guy I thought of that something he could possibly be comped to. And now we'll have to see, but that was a guy that came to my mind. And we'll do one more before we call it a night. Over under 500 yards for Jason Patterson and over under 5 sacks for Fearbry. Nate Agnew. Under for Patterson. I think he's probably running back 2, but it seemed like most of his times were spent with the ones. He never really popped a run when I was there at practice, so harder to get a feel for him. But in the spring game, I did like some of the athletic juice he had. The only way I think Patterson gets over 500 is if something happened to chip train him. So that would be an under for me. Tyrese Fearbry, over under 5 sacks. I may be putting too much stock into what I saw against Clemson. But I go back to how we kind of thought of or evaluated Tyrese Fearbry out of high school. But he needed time to add weight, add play strength, all of that. He's done that. You saw the explosiveness that we saw in high school. The get off, the bend, the ability to turn the corner. Like you saw all that against Clemson. I think that's going to come out this year. Again, like kind of what I talked about with Gerard Smith, Fearbry, he's going to get one-on-ones. True, clear one-on-ones, maybe against not the best pass rusher because they're going to have the offensive line they're playing are going to be focused on other things, and he's going to be able to turn the corner, I think, and get sacks. So I would take the over here. He's one of the biggest wild cards on the year. I think he's a guy that could sneakily have a really big season for Kentucky. So I will go over Fearbry there, and that'll wrap up our show for tonight. Later this week, Tuesday, we talked to Bush Hamden. We'll be up in Lexington for that. We'll have live updates on KS Board. We'll have a practice report off that. After that, Thursday, Brad White talks, same thing. We'll be up in Lexington and practice report about that. Saturday, Mark Stoops is scheduled to speak. We'll see if he speaks before then, but we'll definitely have coverage of that and what he says, if he says anything about the NCAA violations, sanctions. Again, for everyone in the chat, still over 150 of y'all in there, so good job. You did. You answered the call, and I appreciate that. Before you get out there, just hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button if you hadn't in YouTube, and we'll see you party people later.